Congratulations, by the way. We haven't spoken since the election.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Kath Edsall. For those of you who don't know me, I was recently elected to serve on this school board starting in January. The past 3 years have been extremely frustrating for many of us. Regardless of our positions, many a late night has been wasted debating the correctness of our positions. But all of this anger and all of this divisiveness is due to one premise, that we must close an elementary school. I'm here tonight to question this basic assumption. From the beginning, the community has said we want our neighborhood schools. Furthermore, I ran on a platform to keep all 6 schools open pre-K to 6 and was elected by a significant margin. Indulge me as I share a personal experience about operating on an incorrect premise. 5 years ago, sorry, it's a little hard, I saw a picture of a toddler who was living in an orphanage. I felt an instant connection and thought he was meant to be my son. I contacted 3 agencies with programs in his country, and they all refused to work with us. At that point, I didn't have even my partner on board. Over the next 2 years, I raised money for his adoption grant, hoping it would help him find a family, secretly hoping it would be us. Then a new agency opened a program in his country, and they agreed to work with us. Due to their inexperience in the nature of international adoption, another 1.5 years was spent collecting, notarizing, apostilling documents, many of which had to be redone more than once. Due to 4 days before I was scheduled to travel to meet him, I slipped on the ice and broke my leg. Family and friends told me, give it up or at least postpone, but I couldn't hear them. I pushed back my departure, traveled a week after surgery, arrived in Quito, Ecuador, and promptly got very ill due to the altitude. I eventually ended up in the hospital, but before I did, I met the now 6-year-old boy. Sadly, there was no happy ending. We knew he had Down syndrome, but we were not prepared for the significant and debilitating effects of years living in an institution it had on this little boy, or the time he would require simply to keep him and our other children safe. After a week of continued attempts to make it work, I came home without him. About 3 years ago, Dr. Chapin came before the community concerned about declining revenues. His recommendation was to close 2 or 3 elementary schools and move our 6th grades to the middle school, consolidate service, and in theory save money. No adjustment has been made to the assumption, despite many changes to the data which with this assumption has been made. From the beginning, the entire community has repeatedly said they don't agree with the assumption and want to look at other options. Since Dr. Chapin's original presentation, the data has changed. Revenue outcomes have not been quite as dire as they predicted. This year we saw a significant uptick in district enrollment. MSU has signed contracts to move forward with the FRIB project, potentially bringing more families and more children to the district. The November 13th Lansing State Journal ranks MSU 9th in the country in international student enrollment, with an increase in the last year of 8%. MSU now owns the old state police property, creating a 3rd ideal location for married housing near Red Cedar Elementary, if only we could manage a cooperative relationship. The biggest problem with any plan to close any schools is that our elementary schools are at or near capacity, and consolidation will not create much in savings. Furthermore, the added cost of transportation would offset much, if any, savings. Now the argument is the community wants a 6-8, and then we must close one school to avoid class splits and to level out class sizes by having 2 classes at each grade level. Yet the October 8th superintendent's report to the board states that we would need to close 2 schools in order to have 2 classes at every grade level in the remaining schools. And if we eliminate schools of choice students, as many of the same supporters of our current plan suggest we do, we would have to close 3 schools just to have 2 classes at every grade level in the remaining schools. This doesn't take into consideration that Glen Cairn doesn't have 12 classrooms to accommodate 2 classes at every grade level. With the recent survey, we missed a perfect opportunity to ask the question that really needed to be asked. If it means closing your neighborhood school, do you support a 6-8 middle school? If it means closing your neighborhood school, do you oppose class splits? If it means closing your neighborhood school, do you oppose schools of choice students? Do you support K-5s, even if it means closing your neighborhood school? Unfortunately, the board wouldn't allow the surveyors to ask these questions. The truth is the community has repeatedly said we want our neighborhood schools, but the board has refused to listen. You've ignored the K-8 Facilities Committee, MSU, and the City Council. You dismissed the OCR complaint. You have blamed the bond outcome on timing of the election and continue to state that the closing of Red Cedar had nothing to do with the outcome, yet I pose if Red Cedar had not been in there to be closed, that bond would have passed. You refuse to see the recent board election as the community's desire to consider other alternatives, and you intend to push through a school closure in the 12th hour by counting votes of a selected board member and an unelected board president. From my personal story, I understand why you continue to have a hard time hearing us. You've been operating under a given belief system. When that happens, it's not uncommon to have tunnel vision. But maybe it's time to look at all the roadblocks that have prevented you from implementing this plan over the last 3 years and think of them now not as the enemy, but as reminders that maybe you've been driving down the wrong road. Now is your opportunity to change course. There is no magic in a 6-8. In fact, there is significant research that shows test scores drop and behavioral referrals increase when 6th graders are moved to the middle school. This trend continues well into the high school compared to students who stay in elementary school through the
No, it's okay. I'm going to let her.
through the 6th grade
Watch.
and are not offset by perceived advantages of added electives and facilities. We were a successful K-6 district before the current configuration. As a pre-K-6 district, the administration could be housed at the middle school, decreasing the amount of sinking funds needed to alter it. Our current year budget shortfall in the previous unamended budget was approximately $200,000. According to information we received in the K-8 Facility Committee and a recent conversation with Dr. Chapin, returning all of our schools to K-6 neighborhood schools would lead to a decrease in transportation budget of $200,000 to $300,000. Boom. Budget balanced, assumption disproved, time to move forward together with new plans and new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Kath.